relax and unwind, but stay informed. It's the Sunday Cafe on Magic Talk.
What is self-care? What is wellness? Well, we're lucky enough to be joined by our life coach, speaker, author and executive coach, Tanya Unkovich. Tanya, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mitch.
What is self-care for people that haven't really looked into it?
Well, it's about taking care of yourself, body, mind, spirit, everything. Making sure that you show up in life in an optimal state, physically and mentally.
Do you think maybe there's a lot of people out there that could benefit from self-care that perhaps don't realise that self-care is a thing?
Absolutely. I suppose we're not brought up to do it, right? And so you don't realise that you need it, until you notice something is falling over, whether it be physically, you're not feeling well emotionally, something happens in your life, maybe an adversity kicks in, and all of a sudden you fall over. That is when often we realise.
What are examples of self-care that you think our listeners should be thinking about?
Well, of course, the obvious, physical self-care, taking care of our body. It's the only one we've got. Often we don't start addressing things until we start noticing things aren't working well. So your physical self-care, movement. And, of course, what you put in your body, good nutrition. And then we've got the emotional, mental side of things where you take care of your mind every single day, because the way you think is the way you are going to feel. So the more you focus on the good stuff, the more the good stuff is going to happen in your life.
It's interesting how that physical stuff can have such a mental impact as well, because, you know, I've started going to the gym in the mornings rather than the afternoons.
Yeah.
And you mentally feel so much more prepared for the day. And I think that's something that a lot of people maybe don't realise, that there's such a mental impact of working out and going for runs.
It is, isn't it? And also you get it out of the way, so I suppose there's a psychological thing there. But the mornings are a great time to get going. And, you know, you can mix it all up too, right? You can do your mental, your resilience thinking and all of that sort of thing while you're doing the physical as well. So self-care on all levels.
What are some maybe examples of intellectual or spiritual self-care that people might be interested in?
Well, the intellectual is read, even just read. Always increase your knowledge, because that is one way that you will always be stimulated, right? I mean, Jim Rohn says, never miss reading every day. You can miss a meal, but don't miss reading and learning something. So you will always be stimulated that way. Spiritual self-care, well, meditation, quiet time. So many of the great leaders and teachers and entrepreneurs who have done so well in life, they all have the one thing in common. They all spend time quietly either meditating, because that's when you start, you know, the creativity really does happen when you're quiet like that.
Yeah. The meditation one's so interesting. I started doing this last year. I haven't talked about it with too many people, but I am now on the radio.
Yes.
But I think it is such an interesting time, because it's very seldom in a day when you actually by yourself and you get to think about things. I think the only difficulty is actually trying to stay in the moment and not drift off about thinking what other problems there are. So, I mean, how impactful do you think meditation is to sort of, you know, people not just professionally for work, but also personally just to look after themselves?
It is an amazing tool.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we often go, oh, okay, I've got to do an hour of meditation. If you can't do an hour of meditation, start with 2 minutes, then increase it every single day. Because you're right, the mind goes everywhere, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you want to just start that a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. And if it's not perfect, so what?
Yeah.
Just start and just be quiet and silent. It's so hard to sit with yourself sometimes, isn't it?
Oh, it is, I can tell you. Hey, you've got emotional self-care here. What does that mean?
Well, it's taking care of the feelings, and so much what comes after the thinking is the feeling. So it's being very aware of your thoughts, and the better you can think, then the more beautiful your feelings will be. So also not to be scared of feelings as well. So many people think, oh gosh, I've got to be stoic and macho. I can't look like a sissy, whatever that is in inverted commas. Just allow whatever feelings come up, because if you don't, you're going to try and push them down.
Yeah.
And, you know, the common ways to do it with either eat too much, drink too much, anything to run away from their feelings.
Yeah.
They're going to come back and revisit you sometime. So just let them out, and they do pass. That's the great thing about feelings. So emotional wellness is very, very important to nurture those feelings.
There's one that really interests me here, and that's financial self-care. So is self-care financially, I don't know, splurging on a whole lot of shopping online when you're feeling down? What is financial self-care?
Financial self-care is being aware and being mindful of A number of things. What you do with money, what you think about money, how you feel about money. I often say, get your head out of the sand, don't be an ostrich, and get honest with how things are looking financially for you. It's just awareness, and there's no shame around that. So many people have shame around that because they think, oh, I'm terrible with money, I'm a bad spender. And so that's how they keep the patterns repeating, don't they? Then they just keep shopping and spending and wasting money. So, that is an amazing way in order to be able to save, is by just simply being aware of where your money is going.
It is 7 minutes to 11 on Magic Talk. We're talking with Tanya about self-care, some really interesting stuff there. Financial self-care we've just covered. That is one that I probably need to think about as well. It seems like I'm running out of money every week. Look, Tanya, self-care, is this something that you've found has come into the mainstream a little more? And the reason I ask is because I'm a young guy, and it's not something a lot of young blokes talk about, right? But then when you bring it up with some of your friends, you actually find out, they have been doing meditation, or they have been writing in a diary. So from your experience, have you found this is becoming more in the mainstream now?
Absolutely. And with social media, it's becoming more acceptable. And some people call it something else, not necessarily self-care, mindfulness, and there's so many other words to describe it. But most definitely, it's definitely something that everyone knows they need to do right now in order to show up the best way they can, personally and professionally.
For people that have never done this, what is your first recommendation? So they've probably heard you this morning thinking, okay, this sounds pretty hot. I need to be doing this. What's the first thing people should be doing? Is it downloading the meditation app? Is it going for a run? What should people know?
Asking some good questions like, well, how's life going for me right now, really? How are things really? Getting honest with yourself and going, you know what? I'm actually not in the best shape physically. I'm panting going up the stairs. I better take a bit of inventory here and ask myself, am I operating at the most amazing level that I possibly can? So just do that even. Even just open up with somebody, because so many people keep to themselves about it because there's so much shame, right?
Yeah.
And you don't want to fess up and go, actually, I need help. So getting honest with yourself and even with another person is probably the best place to start. And you can do that right now.
Yeah.
Within the next few minutes. You don't need to do anything else.
It's interesting. We talked before about physical, emotional, intellectual, all those different ones. And it's quite, I think, interesting how if one of those things is off, say, physically, that can affect emotionally and intellectually. So all these things are kind of intertwined, aren't they?
They sure are. Well, look at how good you feel by getting up in the morning and going to the gym, right? It changes how you feel straight away. And you feel better about yourself, don't you? You're all clean and feeling a bit buff and your shoulders are back. So you operate differently in the world when you show up like that.
Yeah. Oh, it is really interesting, isn't it? And look, let's talk about some of the things that self-care can help. And you've got a few things here. For example, maybe a loss of a marriage or relationship. And why is it so important that self-care comes into something like that? Because, heartbreak can be pretty tough. And I suppose that's one way through it.
Yes. And also it's often uncharted territory for many people. It's something that they've never experienced and they don't know how to go through it. And they don't have the belief in themselves that they will get through it. That's a big thing. Yeah. So it's important to talk to someone else who has been through it and just get some steps and just be able to open up and say, look, I am not coping. That is okay to say I am not coping.
That talking one's really important, isn't it?
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah. Hey, another one here, job loss. That's one that some people have to deal with more often than not these days. So do you think self-care can help that?
Very much so, because your ego, your self-worth gets a hit. No matter what, you get this feeling of something is wrong with me. Why me? And so it's very important to go somewhere, speak with someone who will help you through that transition, because you can easily go into a spiral, into a darkness, and just to know that you're not the only one who's been there and you can get through it.
How did you get involved with self-care? What's your experience been with that?
It was a matter of necessity for me, going through a number of issues in my own personal life that I had to address. So I knew that self-care was a must for me. And my late husband, passed away when I was 40. So I knew that I could have gone down a rabbit hole of self-destruction, or make a decision to get through life. And so part of self-care was actually, Tanya, you better start eating, you better start walking and exercising and talking to someone, or else you're going to drown in these terrible emotions.
For people that maybe think life's going okay, or nothing's too bad, do you think this could help them, or is it a bit of waste of time? Or on the other hand, do you think maybe they're not living their life to the fullest, they just don't know it yet?
Why settle for mediocrity when you can go for outstanding?
Yeah.
And have an amazing life. So why settle? So many people don't believe that they can get there, or that they are worth it even, So step up to a higher standard, because we've all got it in us. Some just do things differently.
Do you ever come across people in your work that are very skeptical of all this sort of hocus pocus sort of stuff? I mean, it's
sure
like I
are.
said, it's come into the mainstream a bit more now, but you must come across people that are a bit like, oh, what's this? And then they find out how good it is.
Well, that's true. And often some of those people haven't hit rock bottom. They're not in enough pain to make change. And so they go away and go, no, I'm going to keep doing this on my own. I'm all right, mate. But then they come back again because things actually aren't working for them as well as they thought. And, they've just put their ego aside a little bit, and they've gone, you know what, there might be something out there that is a little bit better, that can help me live to a higher standard. And when they start feeling what it's like to live to a higher standard, they go, you know what, I'm not going back to that anymore.
Yeah.
Because this is what it feels like and I like it.
Self-care, very important.
Sure is.
Appreciate your time, Tanya. Before you go, how can people get in touch with you, and how can your services help them?
Well, just Google my name, Tanya Unkovich, and it's spelt with a U-N-K, and go to my website, tanyaunkovich.com. So you can see a lot on my website on how I can help you live an amazing life.
Fantastic. Appreciate your time this morning.
You are welcome.
That is Tanya, our life coach this morning, talking all things self-care. Really important that you get into that. If you do have problems in your life, I do have to say that it's something that can help a lot of people, and perhaps people don't realise how much it can help them.